Well, everyone, welcome. I'm Hamilton Bean. I'm interim chair of the Department of Communication. And for the past 20 years, the department has hosted Communication Days. It's a celebration of the many ways communication enriches our daily lives, advances our professional goals, and feeds our democracy. To celebrate communication in action, we typically invite community experts to our campus, where we ask local communication practitioners to share their knowledge with our students, faculty, and staff. This approach merges traditional classroom learning with embodied and experiential learning. Now, with the pandemic, we've not been able to do this, but tonight, our online activities still advance our department's mission, which is to use communication to cultivate a more equitable and humane world. And we will ask our guest speakers, who we'll introduce in a minute, to frame their work within larger issues of communication ethics and civic responsibility. I'd like to thank the Communication Days Organizing Committee, Dr. Megan Herson, Dr. Mia Fisher, and our program assistant, Michelle Maydal. I'd also like to thank our panelists for joining us, and thanks to all of you for joining us virtually for Communication Days 2021. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Herson to begin the program.
Thank you, Hamilton, for that introduction. Yes, we're very excited to have our panelists here today. The spirit of this keynote panel is about entrepreneurship. So all of our panelists have created their own businesses, and they're here to talk to you about that experience, hopefully to inspire our students who are thinking about endeavoring on that adventure themselves. So we have our lineup of Krystal Covington, the CEO of Women of Denver and Marketing Consultants. We have Anish, Parikh, a founder and CEO of Honcho, Greg Hollenback and Jay Parker from the Modern Eater, and Tony Smith, the founder and owner of Denver's Cupid, the only LGBTQ matchmaking service in Denver. So I'm really looking forward to this. We are recording this, so if you are interested in viewing this later, I can send that to you all as well. So let's start it off with Krystal. So
I'm a slow share. I do this all the time and still struggle every time. All right, so now you should be able to see my screen. So this is the journey that I went on. I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible, but I wanted to share some of the lessons that I learned as a newbie starting my career and what I currently do now. So I'll start with what I do today. And what my work looks like right now is I'm a publicist and marketing strategist, and I support small to mid-sized businesses in consulting, technology, and retail. I also run a women's organization, which is a little more hands-off, as I have people that help to support me in running it, but I'll talk about the journey in building both of those. So the way my business works, I have a team of contractors that help me to get things done and also leverage AI technology to get my job done as well. So I have a lot of tools that I use to help me get work done. The two major things that I do are helping clients land PR mentions, influencer campaigns, things like that, some of the new digital things, but also doing basic advertising, SEO, social media, and some of the regular marketing avenues that they need to have done for them. So one of the first lessons that I learned, so everything in here is kind of framed in terms of lessons. I had a job very early on, which many of you, before you start your entrepreneurial journey, I really do feel like it was supportive for me to have worked for a traditional employer for a while, to be able to understand what people need, how businesses run, and get a lot of really hands-on business experience. My first real job after college was creating flyers and planning events and helping leasing up apartment buildings. I leveraged that role to be able to get in with the executives, and I ended up being at the point where I would take the place of the CEO if there was something, an event or something that he was invited to, or a presentation he wasn't able to make it to. I would take his place. So I ended up as a very young person taking on a really high-level role, but I never had the title. So I was taking the place of spokesperson, publicist, and strategist within the company and doing a lot of things with the executives, but I never had an executive title. The company had a problem with titles. It was a kind of cultural thing, and I just let that go because I really wanted that experience. And when I left the company, I asked them to report my title as what I wanted it to be. And I framed my title for the next role that I wanted to earn. So I was able to make that change later on and didn't deal with it while I was working there. The next big thing that I learned along the way was leadership is the biggest learning lesson of all. Being a leader of leaders, and I learned that at a big Fortune 500 company. So my next role, so I had longevity at the companies that I worked for. So I worked for almost 5 years at one, and then I think it was about 3.5 at the next, all while building entrepreneurial endeavors on the side and learning how to be an entrepreneur at the same time. But at that Fortune 500, I was solving big internal communications challenges. And because I had so much executive experience connecting with people at high levels, I was able to use that to still stay involved in what was going on at the C-suite and with the highest level people to work on big projects like helping to reduce employee turnover, media training the executives, and taking really big projects on, which was amazing because I learned to continue to work on my leadership. And leading leaders is a very different level of leadership and something that takes a lot of practice and confidence as well. So it helps to build your confidence. And it's something that really helped me in being an entrepreneur now and having to deal with executives and CEOs and tech founders especially. I have to be uber confident and know how to lead them well so that they trust my strategy, they trust the work that I'm doing. And all of those tools helped me to be better as a consultant today and to lead my teams today. The next thing, and I know that a lot of young people are really great about this, is having side gigs. Those side gigs, I know some companies are starting to get better at it. My jobs never liked that I had side gigs, but they were the best learning and training grounds that I ever had. So having those other projects where I practiced working on building something from the ground up, learning to, create new things and innovate from and tweak and do all of the things and build teams. All of that was extremely beneficial to me over the long term, both at my jobs and as an entrepreneur to continue to grow and be able to hit a capacity where I could finally pay myself and pay myself well. And so my organization, Women of Denver, was the biggest and greatest side gig that I had ever created. And it actually is now part of my real job and my employment. I'm a part of Women of Denver. I lead Women of Denver, and we have regular members and a team of people who help me to host and produce the group. And the things that I did that I think were most essential, that I think are unique skills that help a communications professional, and especially anybody that's going into being an entrepreneur, because you have to touch so many different places and be really great about marketing and promoting yourself. I hosted my own local public access TV show here in Denver. I held weekly events, and that event planning and that constant networking with people was really amazing. I also created video content that every Sunday I would create video content and drip that content throughout the week. So people were always seeing me. I was very visible and able to create a really solid network of people that trust me and felt that I was a great person to follow and someone that they wanted to work with. The next thing that I believe is the secret to success, if you can acquire it, achieve it. I know it's really awkward for some people to start actually getting press for themselves, but I built public credibility through getting PR features. And many of those were because I had built a dynamic network in Women of Denver, and they would start inviting me to be a part of speaking events and invite and provide introductions for me to speak somewhere, or give me opportunities to be able to be featured in news publications and things like that. All of those ultimately came initially from those recommendations from members of my group. I also did things like follow Haro and join Facebook groups where I could meet people that were in media or that contributed to big publications. And the biggest one that I got a while back was a feature in Forbes that was a full page about me. and the organization that I led. And so that allowed me to show my skills off as a publicist. So people love to know that if they're hiring a publicist, I've been featured in Forbes, I've been in Business Insider, I've been in these places. And then also helped me to grow my local women's organization, because who doesn't want to be a part of something that's been in Forbes and sounds really cool and has some credibility to it. So it had a lot of really great benefit. And I did use these sorts of things when I did my interviews as well, and was able to land a director position, being able to say, hey, I've been in the news myself. So, and then the most important thing that I wanted to make sure to share, that I think people forget to share sometimes when we talk about our entrepreneurial journeys, the money is important. And people talk about passion, people talk about networking. They might even sometimes mention the cold calls, but the finances were the part that I struggled the most with, because I was always terrible with money. I had no financial education. I made a lot of big financial mistakes, even just in college. And so I needed a financial advisor. I paid someone that's an hourly person to help me figure out a budget. She literally helped me write a budget and figure out what I spend and what I earn, and help me figure out how to save. And I prepared 4 months. 4 months was not enough, but I had other savings. But I did prepare 4 months of my full salary to accommodate leaving the corporate role that I had. And then I had support. My women's network was making reasonable revenue, and I was able to hire support to make sure that that was running as hands-off as possible, so that I could focus on the consulting business that does have a higher per customer revenue that helps me to build my income faster. So those were all things that I had to think about in starting this process, and very important not to miss when you begin looking into becoming an entrepreneur. And then the last piece is just kind of sharing that the journey took a little time to build. So even though I had already some clientele, even though I had lots of experience behind me, it still took about 6 months for me to ramp up and be able to make the salary that I needed to be making to keep up with my lifestyle. And so knowing that, I wish I had known it a little bit up front, but I did plan for 4 months, so I wasn't too far off. But knowing that, I think, helps with the planning and understanding some of the things that go into the process. I had to learn how to manage my time. I went into the Small Business Development Center and would go for their coaching sessions. I took every educational opportunity I could to figure out how to sell, because I got out there and I realized, oh, I don't have as many leads as I need to build a pipeline to have enough business to thrive. And so I had to figure all those things out in a hurry. And 6 months seems like a long time, but it went really fast. So I used tools that allowed me to post myself on freelance sites. And those freelance sites really helped to carry me. And I did all sorts of communications projects on those sites. I focused on Upwork because it ended up being the best tool for me. An Upwork top rated badge was something that I earned that helped speed things up. So once you get that top rated badge, it just means you work a lot and you get really great scores on the platform. But once I was able to get that, I started getting more referrals, and that helped to boost me. But those freelance platforms are amazing for getting work in the interim as you start building things, and as you continue to learn how to sell and how to continue to build your own profile and build your network and your SEO to be able to attract traffic and all of that, getting your marketing systems in order to be able to get that on your own. So I don't know how much time that was, but that's my overview of my journey in building this. So I look forward to the Q&A to find out what questions you all have.
Thank you so much, Krystal. Yeah, that's actually, you're like perfect on timing. I love it. So yes, as Krystal mentioned, we will have a Q&A after all of our panelists. So feel free to put your questions in the chat, and then we can make sure to get those questions to our panelists after everyone. So thank you so much. Next speaker is Anish Parikh.
So thank you, Megan and Hamilton. Thanks, and everybody. Great to be here. Happy to share our story. What a neat story, Krystal. Thank you so much for sharing. I loved hearing about that myself. I think like all the students, I love hearing stories of entrepreneurship as well. I'm going to share mine. So a little background on who we are. I run a company called Honcho. Honcho prevents people from writing dumb things at work. We make software that analyzes what you're writing at work while you're writing it. So we help you make sure you don't put your foot in your mouth, or worse, hurting your reputation, your career, your company. So that, there's any number of bad things that can happen that we can talk about sometime, but I'm going to share a little bit more about how I got into this. And then I'll share a little bit more about the company. So I'm gonna kick it back and tell a couple stories for a second. My slides don't go along with my stories. I have a slide about the company's trajectory, but I'm just going to tell a couple stories here. So I worked for a fella who was a former VP business development at Yahoo, who told me, I don't believe this totally, but it stuck with me when he said it, and it's going to be relevant to the stories I'm going to tell, that a real entrepreneur, Anish, is what he said, is someone who checks into the most expensive hotel in the city in the morning, and then spends the rest of the day figuring out how to pay for it. And I talk about that because at least my experience has been full of figuring things out, figuring out how to get from the point that I landed in to the next point without having necessarily a plan for it before I started out, which I don't actually necessarily recommend to anybody else, but it is what ultimately is how I did it. And I think it's just, kind of my nature. One of the first things I'll share a little bit like my background. I went to MIT and I studied aerospace engineering in my undergrad. And the way that I felt when I got there, I was pretty outmatched by a lot of the students that I was around. There were such incredible, talented, smart people. And I didn't know that much about technology. I was better at languages and English, much better than I was at math and science. And part of my solution for how I could keep up is I actually delegated the majority of my homework to other smart folks that were in the class. And then I would, we would go on and take the tests, and it was all great, which is actually a little bit frowned upon. So don't do that. I'm not recommending that. I don't think CU Denver would like that, but it turned out to be just, a little bit more natural to my style, I think. And it's how I still learn today. I learned so much about our business by delegating key responsibilities to folks who build the company, and I go off and report on them to our board and to investors. And so I guess I was always it was what I figure I was meant to be doing. Fast forward, I came out of school and I came out of grad school, and I really wanted to save the planet. And so I got to building wind farms. I got into renewable energy because it was such a passion of mine. And I used to go out, I was running around in California. I would acquire land on which we could build wind farms. And I ultimately realized I could do that and I could make a living doing it. I wouldn't, I think the epiphany I had was when I was sitting in our office in Austin for this wind development company. And I was looking around and somebody was printing off, a 300-page document, which was a contract that we needed for, encapsulating this wind farm. And there's books of them all over, and everybody that worked there drove like big diesel trucks. And so I realized that it was a business like any other, and my ability to directly save the planet would ultimately be limited in the sense that it is a business, but my personal ability might be limited because of what I could do. And for me, I came to the conclusion that the best way that I could, do my part to make the planet better would be to build the greatest enterprise that I could and use all of the wealth to improve the planet with, directly. That was my conclusion. And I got into building businesses for other people. I got hired by an oil and gas firm in Texas to build them a renewable energy-based software as a service. And so my first experience with that was that we spent $4 million of a great Texans money to build a business which did about $100,000 of annual recurring revenue. And so I don't know if there's a lot of finance folks out there, but I can just tell you those economics are not amazing. not making anybody happy. In my next business, and the concept, by the way, was these weren't my ideas. I was building businesses for other people who had great visions and wanted somebody to execute the plan. So in my next business after that, with about $100,000 of investment, we got to doing about $100,000 of annually recurring revenue. And so I had learned my lessons and I kind of was doing better. And then in my next one, I actually had no investment and we got to doing, $1.5 million of annually recurring revenue. So definitely had made some progress in figuring out how these things worked. That last one is what I'm going to talk about, which is Honcho. And so these came about as a part of my startup studio. So a startup studio is where people bring great ideas and then the studio really puts them on the market. So I and a team of salespeople, marketing folks, and technologists, we would work with great founders who either had a good idea but didn't understand technology or didn't know how to really take the risks, and work with them to place their concepts on the market. And we would be a partner in their business. So it's kind of like venture capital, but a different take on it, a different model. And so a friend of mine came to me and he said, Anish, listen, I'm a trader. I'm one of the best traders in the Houston area in this market. And I wrote a message saying to my analyst, could we find more arbs like this? And again, if you don't have the background, that's an arbitrage opportunity. And as a trader, it's actually your job to find something like that. But that message ended up landing in a pile of other communications that a regulator, somebody whose job it is to keep markets fair, found when looking at other things, and they didn't like how it sounded. And so they ended up dragging my friend and that company into an investigation which lasted 3 years, cost everybody several $1 million, a lot of sleepless nights. He comes to us and says, could we build this product that would stop these damaging communications before they happen? Now, what happened next is kind of interesting. So he says that to me, and I was actually building another business for him at the time. I had this studio. I'm building several businesses. It's kind of like if you're a plumber and you're like replacing a garbage disposal, and then someone says, "Hey, I need you to replace my toilets." I'm like, "Well, I'm busy. Yeah, I'm elbows deep here." But my friend Evan, he's all agitated. He's a big thinker. He's like, "God, it's a really big idea, Anish. It's going to change the world. Every company on the planet is going to want one." So I said, "All right. I hear you. I tell you what, bud. Why don't you bring me one of them? And if you can bring me one of those people who you say is going to want one, I'm an entrepreneur. You'll have an audience with me." So he gets the head of compliance of one of the top commodities trading firms in the world. He gets this person on the phone the next day. Okay, this didn't happen over weeks. It happened the next day. And so I get on the phone, and this fella says, "Hey, I'm just going to check my time really quick. Megan, how much time do I have?"
Well, I would say about 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah.
3 minutes. Perfect. We're almost done. So I get on the phone with them, and this is the next day after Evans put the idea in my head. He says, "Well, Anish, I heard you've got an interesting product." And I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, I don't even know what Evan told you. But I said, I'm thinking fast. And I go, "Well, Jerry, what have you heard?" And he says, "I hear you can stop damaging communications before they get created." And I'm thinking to myself, all right, response, Anish. "Well, Jerry, what would that mean to you?" So I'm doing market research and I'm trying to make a sale here all at the same time. He says, "Well, Anish, I think it's amazing. I've been in compliance 25 years. I've never heard of such a thing." And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I just landed in this conversation and now I'm going to make a sale to one of the greatest companies out there. I said, "Well, Jerry, you've been around the block. You've been around in compliance 25 years. What's so great about it?" He goes on to tell me, and now he's got my attention because I didn't think there was much to this idea, frankly, when I first heard it. And then finally he says, "Well, Anish, when can I have one?" I say, "Well, it'll be ready in a couple months, Jerry." He's like, "Great. I want one, and so do all my friends." And so I hang up the phone and I start making calls to all the software developers I know to start building this thing and see how we can, get it put out to the market. And I started this conversation with my friend who said an entrepreneur checks in the most expensive hotel room in the city and then figures out how to pay for it. And so a lot of that has ultimately described how my entrepreneurial journey has gone. We've evolved away from that model. We don't just do that anymore. We actually sell the products that we have, not the ones that we don't have. But that ended up carrying forward. We signed up a number of their peers as customers. We brought on some investors, and, kept building the business largely bootstrapped. It was me and a couple other folks in our technology team, delivering on these promises and making sure customers were happy. And then come late last year, kind of mid-pandemic, we brought on $4 million in a Series A, and now we're building out the business. So, I've gone from kind of being the chief bottle washer, as they say, and where I was doing everything. I was the doer in chief when we started, and now my job is really to own as little as possible and make sure that the execs on the team really do. There's a whole process that we implemented called EOS, and I'll just lay this last piece out there. One of the hardest parts for me was that when I started, like I said, I was the doer in chief, and I could keep my spreadsheets and my task plan, and I could make sure I was doing it. I could make sure everybody else was doing it. But that ultimately, we hit a ceiling with that. And that's what caused us a lot of hiccups in kind of 19 and 20, is because the thing that got us that initial success wouldn't yield us further success. We had hit a wall. And so really we needed a framework for making sure that the mission was clear, the vision was clear, we had the right corporate values defined, that everybody's key objectives were clear, and that everybody could march in those directions without, nobody wanted me breathing down their neck. And we had outgrown my talents anyway. I don't know how to do the job that all of our great execs do. And so it was really bringing that framework in place that could take me out of the middle and let all the great people do their work. That was key for like unlocking the potential of the business. So that's my story overall. Like I said, really appreciate being here and having the chance to talk to you guys, and love to take your questions later.
Thank you so much, Anish. I very much appreciate it. So
Welcome.
if you are just joining us, we have heard from Krystal Covington, as well as just heard from Anish. And our next panelist is going to be Greg Hollenback and Jay Parker, sort of manning the technology here from the Modern Eater.
Congratulations to everybody, and what a road that you're going to go down. Entrepreneurship or entrepreneurialism, whatever you'd like to call it, it's a tough road. And so what I do best is I tell stories. I'm a storyteller, and I'm going to tell you the story of myself and the Modern Eater. And just like Anish, I need your software, my friend. I come into that problem a lot, stepping on my toes of things that I say, but I think that makes all part of the passion that I have. And like Krystal, this is one of my favorite topics. So let's just dive right in. I am Greg Hollenback. I am founder and CEO of the Modern Eater. I'm a local boy. I've lived in Cherry Creek for 48 years. I've been in California, a couple of those, but my whole life, all I really knew how to do was talk, and I had a passion for broadcasting and radio. We're in Studio Kitchen, Colorado right now, home of the Modern Eater Show. And I'll just tell you what the Modern Eater Show is in a second. But if we have time, which I highly doubt, we'll give you a little tour around and show you what this studio looks like. Oddly enough, I'm fairly nervous about this. I never talk about myself. And I talk about others. I tell other people's story. So the Modern Eater, we're a homegrown, hyper-local multimedia production company that just so happens to have a show involved in that. We broadcast from this studio Monday through Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 2 p.m. You can check out more at themoderneater.com if you're interested in what we do. Basically, what we do is we connect dots here. We create community, and we create networking, which builds a platform that I think is really enjoyable. So Jay is going to take this down, and maybe we'll get a little bit more close and intimate. And we'll talk about how the Modern Eater got to the point of where it is today. But let's start from the beginning. Again, my career in broadcasting started in about 2000. So 21 years ago, I started in broadcasting from the bottom up. And just like Krystal, I think you find something that you really enjoy to do, and you find another business or a company that you can learn from, that you can do some of your trial and tribulations on somebody else's dime. Little did I know at the time when I started broadcasting that I would own a broadcasting company in the form that it is now. So over the years, over the past 21 years, I've held a overnight board opping job. That's basically pushing and pulling buttons for other people. I've produced shows as well, a morning show producer, fill-in host. a host of my own shows, classic rock DJ on 103.5 The Fox, talk show host on 630 KOW and 850 KOA. And also at that point in time, I brokered a show. All of the things throughout the year in my broadcasting career came to one point saying, why am I creating all of this great content for other people? I know every aspect of the business. I know the marketing aspect. I know the sales aspect. I know the producing aspect. I know the programming aspect. That's fine, Jay. Jay's like sitting there very carefully pulling up the camera to me. The point I want to say is once you know ins and out of all the business that you want to do, at that point you start to think, well, maybe I could do this for myself. And I started creating doubts. And next slide, if you will. There's a great podcast that I came across, and it was a pivotal moment in my life. And this is really when the rubber meets the road. It was called The Power of Quitting. It was a Freakonomics podcast. And the battle inside of my entrepreneurial mind versus my mind that wanted to play it safe as somebody who had a paycheck every 2 weeks direct deposited in my bank account, 15 years of experience and a comfortness or a layer of protection, health benefits. I mean, those are insanely important. But the power of quitting. So what is your sweat equity, which mine was 15 years of broadcasting at iHeartRadio and seemingly going to progress forward within their rank and files? Or what does my sweat equity mean towards my potential equity? And there was a point in time to where my potential equity became much more broad or vast or there for me to grow than what I've done in the past. And there were times when I would literally rock in bed and I would fret over making this decision. And that's where it goes into a term that was told to me called, are you a wantrepreneur or are you an entrepreneur? And listen, this isn't for everybody, I promise you. There were times where I just said, okay, I will have The Modern Eater as a side job. I will broadcast this on the weekends. I owned my own programming. I brokered it out. What does that mean when you hear those Saturday commercials, if you're ever listening to the radio, like a colon blow commercial, or here's something that you can get to herbs and spices to make your health better. I bought programming so that I could have a show to do that. I knew that wasn't the future. Broadcasting was one of those things when I first started out. You went in and you turned on the microphone, and when you were done, you turned it off and you were done. Communications has changed. Now you make the content, but you build the content so that it can be consumable for those people that want to consume it when they want to consume it. And so the power of quitting was something that was a very interesting thing for me. But when I did that, then I was focused fully on building a brand. And building a brand, I'll tell you what, you can't do it alone. Networking is key. Navigating the marketplace is something to where you really have to let your brand take you where it wants to go. If I was to take the Modern Eater show and be a weekend radio show that just describes food on a plate, that would have died on the vine. Those days are over. I knew the brand had to migrate, but the road was unclear. It was new cut road of what we were getting into. And so I built a great team with myself and Jay Parker, who's behind the ones and twos over there in the studio. We've got a great CEO. As an entrepreneur, you hit a ceiling. You hit a ceiling of your own capabilities, and it almost becomes suffocating because at that point in time, you have a lot of options, you have options that you have to explore. Those options are building a great team around you with a knowledge base that's different than yours. It means self-learning. If there's another YouTube video of how to operate a WordPress website, I am going to go crazy, but you have to do it. You have to learn so many hats to build a business, because what you're doing when you're building a business is you're putting those hats on, and they stay on and they stay on until you get to the point of where your business is no longer a hobby. It's no longer a small business. It's a business that needs to be scaled. And so you go through these growth periods of just starting out, and how do you start out, and how do you get footing? And once you have footing, how do you take another hat off? You have to do these all at the same time while not having any money. Because when you do get a little bit of money back into your company through revenue, you're going to take that same revenue And you're going to make a choice. Do I want to spend this money because I've had none for so long? Or do I want to invest it back into the infrastructure of the company? Okay. So when we started out as a radio show on the weekend on 630 KHOW, our overhead was our rent to be on the radio. We didn't have a studio like this. And I knew it was important that we would need to. So now what do we have? We have a community of people that come together in this studio, that we tell the stories of farmers and ranchers and brewers and distillers and winemakers, anybody who has a product. We're local. We believe in that. We believe in community. We believe in building together. So when you see the resources, and we have so many right now, we all have our own little media companies with our Instagrams and our Facebooks and our Twitters, and you can reach out and you can look for people that have different skill sets than yours. And you never know. I mean, everything to me is negotiating or trade. And then when you get to the point where you actually can be paid for your services or pay someone for their services, boy, it starts feeling good. It starts feeling really good. But the struggle from A to Z, and I'll tell you what, we're not at the end point. This is the building of a brand. But what I can tell you is building your story is going to be everything. When you can sit down, you can talk about your company and the community that you've built around it, and you can talk about your story and show the passion that you have, other people will get on board. And that's what you want. You want to build a long-lasting brand that's meaningful to when you get up during that day, and the struggles will be real. But you know, at the end of the day, just one or two accomplishments, just getting one step further, they add up. Each step adds up. It's not an easy route, but building a brand is fun. Can be fun. Anyways, I don't know how long that was. I did want to show some people around the studio if that was something you want me to do. Happy to take questions. But at the end of the day, the journey that we've had here, the people that we've met, the talent that we've got to tell their story, that's what it's all about. And that's what you need to do, is build your own story as well. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just showing us around really briefly around the studio.
Yeah, Jay, grab that camera. We'll show you around. So this is our studio. It's like a New York apartment. Here's the living room. Here's the bedroom. Here's the bathroom. This is really what we do. So this is our news desk. We do a lot of breaking news here. There's a walk-in cooler. This studio is usually full of life with folks in here, purveyors, product purveyors. You can see a lot of local products like this, 291 out of Colorado Springs. Just really cool local brands, brews, beers. These are all places that you probably go every day. The Spice Guy is here. This is where Jay works, over in the production corner. Elevation Food Service Reps gives us a lot of our equipment. This is where chefs will come in and they'll cook. We do a lot of videoing. A lot of just recording the shows, building segments. You can see over here is kind of, we write on the walls. Those are our planning boards. We're mapping out a road trip right now. Every year we take about 3 weeks to a month to tour Colorado to actually connect people with their food and beverage. So come June 16th, we'll be heading out on the road again. We're going to make a loop around Colorado and visit farms and ranches and breweries and distilleries and interview folks. And then we will come back, and in the summertime, we do something called the Summer Dinner Series, where we'll get the top chefs in Colorado, and we will get all those delicious ingredients that we sourced, bring them back for the chefs to play with, and then we connect folks through a very comprehensive multimedia format dinners, to where they sit down, enjoy the food and beverage with the chefs cooking right in front of them. And we tell the story of the purveyors. So you'll see folks that are dining. We'll have TVs around, and there'll be a farmer that with his family on one television showing you the corn that you're eating, and so on and so forth. So it's just a very community oriented. And this is Jay Parker. This is the man that makes it all happen and look good. Jay's got great stories of himself. If we had more time, we'd certainly love to talk to you about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. And so our last panelist then is Tony Smith with Denver's Cupid. So Tony.
Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for having me today. It's an honor sharing my entrepreneurial story, and wow, what a rock star lineup. I'm coming to you live from Palm Springs, California, But my husband and I of 19 years actually live in Congress Park. So we're actually in Denver, but I'm not going to show you the background of my pool. But anyways, it's quite amazing. But my name is R. Tony Smith. I am founder, owner, and Cupid of Denver's Cupid, the only LGBTQ matchmaking company in Denver. And I'm proud to be one of literally a handful of LGBTQ matchmakers in the entire country. I am a specialist in the art of matchmaking and the power of connection. It's 100% private and personal matchmaking, no swiping left or right. And I bring 20 years of connections in Denver, along with a worldwide network to expand your contacts immediately, save you time, and make dating exciting again. And something that you'll learn as an entrepreneur is you've got to get this 30-second pitch down. So this is part of that, but we're also going to go more into the story of how I got here. But I believe everyone deserves love. Many LGBTQ people are not told that growing up, and that's one of my mantras. Everyone deserves love, and somewhere over the rainbow is now. And you're going to lose gay points if you don't know what movie that's from, all right? But our services include personal matchmaking and social events for all, including professional networking, speed dating events, and more. And it's all about love and connection. And yes, I'll be hosting events at the all-new Clayton Hotel and Bars ASAP, because I will be continuing to brand myself as Denver's Cupid. I can't wait. But thank God for vaccines. So how did it all get started? Simply go to, so how do you get started, I should say? You go to denverscupid.com and create your free profile. As soon as you're in our database, I can get to work right away connecting you to long-term loving relationship possibilities and possibly become your personal love headhunter. How? First, it starts with the profile, where all are considered a good catch. And if there's a client investing in our matchmaking services and you're a potential match for the client, you as the great catch gets to go on a virtual date for free. Thank you, COVID. Nothing to lose, everything to gain. Then after the date, I consult with both people to see how the date went and hopefully set up your next date, virtual or in person. So more about the company. I'm going to do a quick screen share. So this continues to be the backbone of everything that I do. Matchmaking is all about making connections with people, but then also having them tell you very personal things about them. And so this is on the website because when people are doing research about your company, they want to know what is your vision and mission, your values, perhaps. So my vision is Denver's Cupid matches and inspires love for all of Denver's LGBTQ community. Something that I learned in the business development process was, for centuries, all communities have a matchmaker. A lot of us are very familiar with Eastern Indian matchmakers as part of their culture. Then I discovered, oh, there's a matchmaker for Jewish people 20 to 30. And then there are just, you name it, for every community. So I am very proud to be representing our tribe, the LGBTQ tribe. My mission is that Denver's Cupid serves the LGBTQ community and is dedicated to finding and inspiring love and long-term committed relationships. And I think it's so important to always go back to, why did I start this business? And then also what's really important is your own personal, your list of your values. And here are all my values. And I am definitely very upfront about what I bring to the table for people. And I also I've always been a hyper public person. So I always ask people to go to my Tony Festo, is what I call it, my manifesto. I stole that from Stanley Marketplace, good friends of mine. But I think everyone needs to have their own manifesto, if you will. And another thing is, when you're starting a new business, you might not have any actual testimonials. So I'm going to show you what I did was, okay, so I don't have testimonials on my company yet, but I have testimonials on myself as the character. So what I did is I went to, so that picture on the right, that's our wedding photo, and I had a double wedding with my uncle and his husband, whom I'm actually here with in Palm Springs. But then I went and that's my awesome, handsome husband, Jim Peterson. But I went and asked a lot of friends to write stories about how they know me and then what love means to them. So instantly building credibility with couples. And Craig and Brandon, their marriage is next week. That's super great. I do have one marriage under my belt, by the way. Nate and Jessica are dear friends of mine, so it's important to be very diverse. And yes, I have officiated a wedding, so I will be able to say soon one day, not only can I introduce you to, but I can marry you. So, but anyways, that's another important thing I did want to share. Stop screen share. So yes, so it's really important to stick with your values and your mission and always go back to it and keep refining it even. So how did this all get started? Life is a culmination of your life's experiences. So it is very important for every one of us to take inventory of our lives, all the good, all the bad, the yin and yang of life, and start looking for patterns and signs. Well, my mother threw Filipino disco parties my whole life. And I saw the power of connection and celebration at a very young age, and that never left me. Also, my mother never forgot what people needed, whether it was a drink at a party, change of music, or if someone needed a plumber, or if someone was single. That recognition that I loved bringing people together continued in an 18-year career at the Cherry Creek Arts Festival, where I served as marketing and operations director. And many times I was the face of the festival for TV interviews, and I was always connecting our organization to other businesses, i.e. networking. And in those 18 years, I was always working on win-win relationships throughout the city, as well as serving on many boards of directors, city commissions, and community organizations. And that's also how the phrase, Tony knows everyone. If you need anything, ask Tony, he knows everyone. So turn the clock to 2016. We all know what happened. Trump's election. This is what truly actually led me to eventually create Denver's Cupid, but I'll get to that. So I felt Trump won the election because people got disconnected to government. So I decided to run for Denver City Council to make a difference. And apparently so did 13,000 other minorities and women in 2017. It's awesome. Everything is meant to be, and it all works out. More lessons in life. So I left my career of 18 years at the Cherry Creek Arts Festival to run for office. And while I successfully earned 3,000 votes in District 10, I did not win the election, but I did meet thousands of people knocking on doors. And if there's one thing I love hearing, it's Tony knows everyone, which is another reason why I was encouraged to run for office. But part of my campaign platform was connecting people. Again, it's all these little things that you got to connect in your own life. It was after the election that I had the next epiphany. And the universe, I woke up one day and the universe was like, you're going to be a matchmaker. I'm like, what? What you talking about? And so then I started developing, what does that mean? What does that mean to be a matchmaker? And then COVID hit. And it was a perfect time to develop Denver's Cupid. And I got my big break by getting accepted into the Co-Starters program. That's co.starters. I highly recommend you look it up if you don't know about it already. It's a program at the Covington Champa. And I highly recommend it to everyone to check out for the entrepreneurial programs for startups. The Covington Champa also houses Denver Startup Week. And it was with Co-Starters that I developed the backbone of the company. And I just launched last September on my birthday, the same day we took possession of this house. So entrepreneurial tips. You got this. Believe in yourself. And imposter syndrome is real, people. I work on that all the time. Surround yourself with other awesome people like yourselves, other success stories. Talk to all the people that do what you want to do and steal all the best parts. The business is going awesome, and I'm finding it difficult to keep up. I'm now on the international scene, which is crazy. And okay, so that's the abridged version of Denver's Cupid. Thanks so much for allowing me to share my story. Learn more at denverscupid.com. Check out all social media at Denver's Cupid and my personal stuff, because that's also hyperpublic at @RTonySmith. The ultimate gift I can give back to the universe is connection and love. I highly encourage each of you to discover and respect your passion, what makes you really tick, and cheers to finding your purpose.
Thank you so much, Tony. And so that ends our panelists for today. And so I would love it if folks put in the chat what kind of questions they had. Dr. Mia Fisher is going to moderate our Q&A. So Mia, if you want to take over.
Yes, definitely encouraging you all, bring on your questions. If it's easier to use the raise hand function, you're also welcome to do that. I see that Dr. Hamilton Bean has a question in there in terms of storytelling. Dr. Bean is asking, all of our speakers are fantastic storytellers. They've also mentioned the importance of listening. I wonder what proportion of their success they would attribute to being a good listener, someone who can hear an opportunity and seize it. Great question. Some thoughts from our panelists. Good listening, how important is it?
I'm sorry, could you repeat? I wasn't listening.
Touche.
Yeah, had to get that in there. Sorry. I'll just say this. It's one of our core values. It's one of the things that we look for, seeking to understand, and being a good listener, I would say, is the only way that we built this business. So it's everything for us.
I'd have to absolutely agree about listening, whether it's sales that you're in or storytelling or interviewing. You've got to listen to get the best out of, or to provide somebody with what they're looking for. It's not necessarily your agenda. It's the value of hearing what they have to say. So again, in sales or interviewing, some of the best interviews that I've ever had is when I just, and the term is ask the question and then land the plane and let them do the rest of it. Sometimes you get the best value out of just listening. Absolutely.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
And we do have a couple of other questions in here, which are all quite excellent. Someone is asking about funding. What is the best way to secure funding? Can you all maybe talk a little bit more about maybe especially sort of your early adventures into startups and getting some of that early investment money? How did you go about funding?
Bootstrapping.
Customers.
Go ahead, Anish.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say no funding. You don't want funding as an early entrepreneur because you have tons of ideas that'll take you down a path of despair and being broke. When I first acquired this kitchen, I went into it and that was exactly the mindset. I want to outfit TVs all over this place. I want to have TVs on the wall. I want to have the lounge area. And that wasn't what I needed at the time. What I needed was to just slowly figure out what those needs were exactly and then build slowly. And you know what that does? That builds the story as you go along. You don't want to get to the end. You want to build that story. And a lot of times the money that you spend early on as an entrepreneur is just money wasted.
It's true. It's true. I mean, yeah. I mean, I just to go, so I agree with what Greg said. I will say that, we did raise investor capital ultimately, so we could grow beyond what so we could bring our solution to more companies. We went a long way. I wrestled with it because I really didn't want to do it in a lot of ways. I wanted to keep it kind of old school, for lack of a better word, getting classic, but that was a challenge in the sense of learning for me how to learn to communicate with a completely different audience. Like I could naturally communicate with customers. Communicating with investors was very challenging for me because it's a totally different type of relationship. The short answer is coaching and practice, like anything. Learning from people who knew how to do it and getting advice and trying to figure out what was standing in my way, emotionally or whatever that was preventing me from being successful.
Great, thank you all. I don't know if Tony or Krystal want to chime in as well, but we have lots of other questions in the chat we can go to. Should I move on, or anyone want to chime in? Okay.
There's so many. So for me, I don't deal a lot in funding. I didn't get funding until later, and I started building business credit, and then they give me money because I deserve to get money, and so it worked on the back end. So I really used my corporate role to pay for starting my business, and then I did a launch to invite people to pay ahead for Women of Denver. And that helped me have a bucket of cash that I could use to operate from.
Great. Thanks, Krystal. There's a good question in the chat that I think is probably really especially relevant for some of our students here tonight. The question is, how important is higher education for entrepreneurs? Is graduate school necessary? That's a great question, I think, if some of you could speak to that.
I think on my end, I think my MBA helped me to be able to have at least the confidence. I don't know. Sometimes I think it gave me the confidence to be able to feel like I had a really high level of business acumen. And there's a lot of people in communications roles, both marketing and writing. If you're writing for a company, I did a lot of internal communications writing. And people are really bad at it when they don't get how a company works and they can't really communicate the language of business. So I think a high level degree and getting my degree in a business related field helped me to understand how to do communications work for businesses.
One thing I'd say is, as someone with just my undergrad, I can always say that the more education you have, the better. And it's also going to evolve what you need when you need it. And I know that in my industry, there are all kinds of certification processes, and I see that in my future for additional additional experiences to grow my business. But I think for the most part, it's my personal experience has been my boots on the ground experience that has led me to what I'm doing. And I think that journey is going to be different for every single person. So I think that education journey is also different for every person.
I mean, so as far as education goes, that's a very interesting question as we're transitioning into the information age. I mean, remember when I was a kid, you'd go to the neighbor's basement to find the Encyclopedia Britannica, or I'd go to the Cherry Creek library to find something on microfiche tape. So the overall educational platform, that's good. I mean, that's going to lend you credence in anything that you do. But your daily life should be education. I mean, education, that term should really, the lexicon should change. Because your life should be education. You should constantly be researching, you should be constantly improving yourself, and you should constantly be trying to tap into other people's knowledge base. And that is something that you can do so easily, that's so readily available right now. So when you say the term education to me, that means you're living, that means that you're aware, and that means that you're trying to better yourself with all of the tools available. So that's what I would have to say about education.
Yeah, I mean, in a word, I don't think it's necessary, but it's a longer answer. I don't have much to add other than what everybody else said, but it certainly can be helpful.
Great, thank you all. There are also several questions in the chat that sort of deal with moments of failure or mistakes or dealing with imposter syndrome. Can some of you maybe talk a little bit more about moments where you failed or your ideas failed? How you overcame those moments, what lessons they maybe provided for some of the other projects that you then took on afterwards. Can you all talk a little bit more about those moments of failure and how to grow from them?
I'm going to selfishly go first, mainly because I have another obligation I'm going to have to run to. But I'll say I've failed more times than I can even remember at this point. I mean, it was like one failure after another. And I think, we just keep failing every day, but we keep failing forward in a sense of just trying things. Some of them fail, some of them succeed. And when you've got a mission that I think is big enough that it matters to you and it matters to people, that failure keeps propelling itself forward. Now, not to say that we don't succeed also, but I think it's just a part of doing something that is big. You're just going to keep falling down, and that's okay. You keep picking yourself back up and going on.
One of the things that I absolutely love that I've read in my life is the 4 agreements. And one of the 4 agreements is always do your best. And when you do your best, you know that even if something doesn't work out, well, you did your best. And something that I put in my values and I let people know right away is I can do everything within my power to put 2 people together, but I can't guarantee love. But I did have 2 that I learned a big lesson about, 2 very particular kinds of people that I can't really go into. But one of them called me crying about the date, and I felt like such a failure. But then I said, no, you did your very best. Pick yourself up, learn from it, don't do it again. But it started with you doing your best. And I think that's so important for us to say, don't beat yourself up too bad. Look at yourself in the mirror. You got this.
Krystal, I don't want to.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay. So how do you know success if you haven't failed? How do you know love if you've never lost? What's the barometer at that point in time? It's a yin and a yang. They both work together in tandem. Truly, you need one to be able to measure the other. A life without failure is a life that doesn't take any chances. That's not what you want. You need that failure. You want to fail. You need to wake up saying, I'm going to fail, because if it's a prize fighter that gets knocked down, it's not what you do when you're up. It's what you do when you're down. That's the true lessons in life and in business. And so to get to where you want to be, you got to have a thick skin being an entrepreneur, and you've got to expect failure. And you know what? You need to go beyond expecting failure. You have to want to fail. And when you can look at it from that perspective, it's just no big deal. It's no big deal. It's what you have to do to where you get to where you want to go.
It's funny you said that. That was actually how I built my strategy this year. I came out of this pandemic, so I still did really well last year, even though I was with a toddler at home, no childcare, and I was a hot mess trying to do the best I can. But this year I said, you know what? I'm still in the same situation. I got this kid. I got this life. I have to keep making it work. And I decided I might have to piss some people off this year. And it hurts me. I don't like that. It's actually really scary for me because I lived a very safe career and I did everything perfect. And I just said, you know what? In order for me to really grow and do what I need to do, I actually have to not be so content on being perfect. I don't have time for that. I would spend 14 hours a day trying to be perfect. And now I have just a few hours. And so there is no perfection in a few hours a day. And that is the biggest release ever. And I'm actually making more money than I ever have because I just decided, and I'm not messing up, but just because I released and said, you know what, I'm going to make mistakes and I have to be okay with that. It actually helped bring me another level of success and freedom.
Yeah, and you know what, Krystal, by coming to that conclusion, that's what I love about entrepreneurs is when you have nothing and you're trying to get footing or even climb to your competition's level, you are dangerous. You're so dangerous that you will do things that probably you wouldn't do if you're protecting the cheese or you're just trying to keep your brand stabilized. You want to be dangerous. You want to make failures and you want to recognize success. That's one thing you have to do is reward yourself when you do see success.
I saw a few people mention networking. Can we talk about that, Mia? Is that all right?
Yes, that's what I wanted to go to next. Yes, so questions of how do you network? Do you have advice for networking, especially if that's something you've never really done before? How do you connect with other professionals? Mentorship, I think, is maybe also something that some of you could speak to. So yeah, please go for it.
So I actually got out of college and I had all these speakers tell us, go network. And so I went to networking events that the school put on or that were school adjacent. And I would walk in and eat some cheese. And, it was just this awkward situation of not knowing what the heck I was doing. And so networking is kind of foreign to most of us. And I'm an introvert, super awkward. I just go and walk in a room, I sweat, I go home and I crawl into a ball and watch TV. And so what worked for me is when I did go to an event to focus on meeting one person. And all I needed to do is meet one person and make a connection. And that person needed to leave feeling like we know each other. They know who I am. They know what my skills are, and they could talk about me to someone else. And that was my only goal. And that reduced a lot of the pressure. And when I moved here to Denver and again had to start over again with building a community for myself, I went out and I would connect with people one-on-one, always focusing on one person. And then I would invite people to talk to me, individually. We would sit down for coffee or something like that. And then I would ask them to introduce me to another person like themselves. that could, sometimes I might have a topic, but usually it's, you know more about me now. Who do you think I should meet? And that was the key. And I would just meet person after person, and they were always perfect because people got an understanding of who I was and the kind of people that might help me progress.
I have to hear what Tony has to say about this. Where's Tony? Okay, so networking to me is life. When you become an entrepreneur, you eat, live, breathe, business, what you do. So networking is your friends. Networking are the people that you include yourself with. If you choose to, your networking is you want to play video games and smoke weed, you're going to get really good at playing video games and smoking weed. If you want to surround yourself with other like-minded people, then start evolving to them. Again, you're in the information age. You should be able to sniff out groups on Facebook. You should be able to put call to actions on your page, using it in a positive way. Hey, listen, I'm looking to do this or to meet this person, or I want to learn about web development. You should be able to put call to actions out there all over the place. Beyond that, any networking event, what I was going to throw to Tony was Tony built his own community. He is networking. People come to him at that point in time. I'm surprised I've never met Tony, which is interesting. A lot of the people that he mentioned Stanley Marketplace and Brian Palmer, and you just start, it's a snowball. It's like a ball of yarn. As you start to just roll it back up, it starts to build itself. So don't look at that as networking anymore. Look at it as relationships and friendships, and how you choose to present yourself and show up on a daily basis, because networking will become your life.
Great, thank you all. Tony, I don't know if you want to chime in.
I think Tony stepped away.
Oh, okay, no worries. I saw that he left us some good advice in the chat, so I definitely encourage folks to check that out as well. Great. Thank you all. We do have time, a little more time for a couple more questions. And I think one thing that also already came up in your various presentations a little bit is obviously the pandemic, and how that has impacted not only sort of our work life, our school education life, but also businesses. And so I wonder if you all could speak maybe a little bit more about whether the pandemic has impacted how you do business. Maybe it has impacted in a positive way, in a negative way, but maybe if you all could just speak a little bit more about sort of this last year and its impact on your own various business ventures.
I'm happy to jump in on this one. I mean, I can say for perspective, I mean, I wrote a post about this on LinkedIn. The pandemic ended up creating the best business year of my life, and in a weird way, like one of the best years of my life. I mean, I got closer to my kids, got in better shape than I ever was. My balance sheet got in better shape. It was bizarre, it just kind of, a lot of things went that way. And then because of remote work, we were remote before the pandemic. We've always been. And so it wasn't a change in that sense. It was actually, I mean, we're eager to get back traveling and seeing customers whenever they're ready to have us. But the fact that we can't go and travel and see customers, it's just, I mean, you have to up your remote sales game, which we were already doing a lot of. And so it felt like the world kind of moved in our direction a little bit, and made it easier to just, build our business the way that we had kind of wanted to do it. So we don't have to travel as much, and we just see our customers via Zoom, which was sort of an interesting effect. And now, like everybody, that's the way that our business seems to be trending, at least for a little while longer, that everything is just simpler with less interactions for customers. But it also means we don't get together as much as a team or with our customers, which has negative impacts as well.
I'm actually fairly passionate about this topic itself, because it was 1 year ago at this time that we were faced with some very tough decisions. Again, the Modern Eater Show was a traditional broadcasted show on iHeartRadio on the weekends. COVID hit, and you got to remember what we do is food and beverage. No restaurant was going to spend any money on marketing or to advertise on my show. There was a very tough and real decision of whether we were going to even be able to broadcast or be a business at all. there was no money in the future for us. The one thing that did kick in was my instinct to keep people connected and to keep community together, and to never lead with that ultimate paycheck, but to lead with your passion and what you do for your business. So my initial instinct was, rather than broadcasting once a week on a Saturday, which was very safe for us, was to cancel the Saturday show to save that money, and then to broadcast Monday through Friday. Actually, it was 7 days a week and 4 hours a day, talking to people. What's your story? How are you surviving? What's up with your restaurant? Is the food chain broken? We triple timed, we quadruple timed our efforts at that point in time. What did that lead to? It led to the media award from the Colorado Restaurant Association. It led to opening back up some restaurants after a conversation that we had with Governor Polis on the Modern Eater show. It led to really solidifying our brand in the community. And you know what it did, COVID, for a lot of people, is if you look at the analogy as your business is a tree, and you have so many branches to your tree, but when COVID hit, you needed to start pruning your tree. You had to furlough employees. You had to cut back certain areas. You needed to cut corners. You needed to save money where you could, leaving your trunk as pruned as possible so that you could have a healthy core as a business. And from that, now things are starting to blossom again, and we've solidified ourselves in the business and the industry. And the one mistake that we didn't make was leading with our intention to get money. It was very important to just stay true to our brand. And that was another chance as far as being an entrepreneur. Would it pay off? You never have guarantees, but it certainly did for us.
Great. Thank you, Greg. I don't know, Krystal, if you want to add anything quickly, or?
I don't know how much time we have left.
1 or 2 minutes.
Okay. So the pandemic hit me in a different way. It flipped my business. So everybody knows from my presentation, I had 2 businesses. One is an event-based business and the other was a marketing business. The event-based business was 60% of my income prior to the pandemic, and then it became 20%. And so that's a big flip. And so I really had to convert and change things. And there's a question here about how has modern technology helped you grow? Basically, modern technology is the only way I survived and was able to expand myself in the pandemic. So I had a child at home. As a mom, I did not have the availability to be able to have them go to daycare. I didn't have a daycare. And so I'm at home with the kid all the time trying to do this job that was very challenging. The babysitter was gone. And so I needed to use technology and transition my company to be able to leverage technology to start doing marketing for people, which allowed me to take customers again and to be able to take more customers than I had actual time to serve. So technology is amazing. And if you use the right stuff, you can actually replace your time with, setting something and running it and making it just hum.
Great, thank you all. And with that, we have reached sort of our time for this evening. So I would like to thank you all, our amazing panelists, for sharing your wisdom and your expertise with us. And I will quickly hand it over to Hamilton to officially sort of give thanks to everyone in attendance today, and then also to head us over to our awards. So thank you all for being here this evening.
Yes, thank you, Mia. I want to echo those comments. I found all of the presentations really inspiring, and just all of the speakers were such great storytellers. I really enjoyed that. So thank you very much to our panelists. We're going to now turn to the award portion of our ceremony. Our panelists are welcome to hang out and check out the next generation of leaders coming up. We're going to offer a couple of awards here. So we're presenting 3 awards this year. The first award we're presenting is the Robley Rhine Student Leadership Award. This award honors outstanding leadership in the Department of Communication by an undergraduate student. The award will be presented by Dr. Megan Herson.
Thank you, Hamilton. So our award winner is Elise Newen, and Elise is a double major in communication and ethnic studies. And I've had the pleasure to teach Elise in 4 different communication classes, many which include student collaboration, where she's always supported her group members and championed their contributions. So not only supporting local campus communities through her membership in the Asian Student Association and Vietnamese Student Association, Elise recently worked with a local nonprofit partner, the Colorado Wheelchair Fencing Foundation, to develop a full strategic communication plan, recruiting para-athletes to train for the next Paralympics, which were unfortunately canceled last year due to the pandemic, but hopefully in the future. So Elise, if you just want to come on screen and say your name and when you're planning to graduate, that would be awesome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this award. I'm Elise. I am currently a senior, but I'm spacing out my semester, so I won't be graduating until next spring. But yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Hurston, for this award, and I'm just really grateful for this. Thank you so much.
Well deserved. All right, thank you.
All right. Our next award is the Lael Porter Community Service Award. And this award honors outstanding community service by an undergraduate student in our department. The award will be presented by Dr. Benjamin Boyce.
Yeah, I'll take it either way. So this award is going to Maddie. I want to make sure I say her name right. Madison Mackey, who I call Maddie. So as part of my prison communication and social justice class, I require students to do what I think a lot of professors in our departments have started doing: get out in the community and do something boots on the ground. During COVID, this has been really hard, and a lot of my students resorted to writing letters to inmates and things like that that were safer. And Madison decided, even in the midst of this, to go to the 180 Cafe more than once, more than she was even required to. Near the end of the semester, we ended up taking some of the captured words, free thoughts poetry, and putting it into a podcast for some of the students that hadn't had a chance to finish this. And she still decided to do that as well. She also did some podcasts throughout the semester that were pretty cool. So that's why I nominated her.
Maddie, are you here? I'm not sure if you are. It does not look like that. So Hamilton, if you want to move on to our next award.
Sure. Well, congratulations to Maddie nonetheless. Our final award is the Friend of the Department Award. And this award goes to someone without whose help the department would be lost. It's meant to recognize an individual who's provided support to the department above and beyond their normal duties. And so the award will be presented by our program assistant, Michelle Maydall.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I know that Madison is not here, but you guys probably can't see this because it's clear, but this is what the award will look like that goes out to our winners. And so this will be shipped out in the mail shortly. So I am giving the Friend of the Department of Communication Award to Sarah Thompson. She is the course coordinator for the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, which means that I know everybody's clapping already, which means that her huge responsibility is scheduling all the classes that are offered in the college. So you can imagine that since spring 2020, when COVID really hit the university and everything had to pivot to either a remote or online format, Sarah was incredibly busy making all of those changes happen in the system. And she's the person who adds all of the classes every semester before anybody is allowed to register. And I can just tell you that for this upcoming fall semester, she has changed classes from remote to online to in-person to back to remote. And it is just chaos. And I can't even imagine how she keeps it all straight and gets it right. But even before COVID, Sarah was dealing with our department's constant changes and instructor changes at the last minute. And I am the person that probably works with her most closely. And she handles all of this with incredible patience, kindness, and of course, a great sense of humor. So again, we couldn't do what we do without her. And that is why this year's award goes to Sarah Thompson. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Sarah, for everything you do. And I don't know if she's here. I thought I saw her earlier, but it's late. She maybe had to go get some dinner. But thank you, Sarah, and we really appreciate you. Congratulations.
Great. Well, congratulations to our award winners. Now, if you're participating in the Lambda Pi Eta induction ceremony tonight, a separate link has already been sent to you. So please join us at 7 o'clock for that. To everyone else now, Dr. Mia Fisher will conduct our raffle and conclude our event. And some of us will now head over to the Lambda Pi Eta. So Dr. Fisher, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Hamilton. I've already used this little online program for our raffle, and we do have 4 winners for those King Soopers gift cards. So our winners are Yabing Yang, Ranga Weeks, and I'm already apologizing if I'm butchering names here, Laura Ferrofino, and Sarah Bennett. So if you're one of those lucky winners, we will be contacting you via email to make sure that you get those King Soopers gift cards. And so with that, I want to give a round of applause again to our amazing panelists. Thank you all for being here this evening, for taking the time to share your experiences with us. Thank you to all our students who showed up today. We know that you have many other things you could be doing. So it was great to see so many of you, and we wish you all good luck with the rest of the semester. And thank you all for being here this evening. Take care. Good to see you. We'll see some of you at the Lambda induction in just a few minutes again.
Thank you.